Hey everyone, I hope you're all doing well. This video is going to be on stories from Russia, and I know that everybody liked the Russian forest ranger stories. This is a different person, but these are still pretty spooky stories in my opinion. So as always, pull up a stump, and there's links in the description if you want to support the channel. If you like the video, like and subscribe, and yeah, let's jump into it. Thank you for watching. So from here on out, I'll be talking from the guy's point of view, just to avoid any confusion. I lived in the northern part of Sakha or Yakutia, Russia, for around 10 years, and I've encountered a lot of weird stuff there. So I'll start with some context. When I was 13, my mom and dad break up because my dad was abusive. My mom lost the court case, and my dad gained custody of me. After the divorce, my dad changes and starts seeing weirdos for, quotes, life advice. Some guy tells him that he needs to cut himself off from society to awaken his third eye or something like that. So we moved from St. Petersburg to some place called City 5, a town so secluded that it didn't even have a name. Life as you'd expect it was pretty crap and boring. The schools there don't even teach English, the official Yakut language, or even basic sciences really. The locals are all pretty cool though. But onto the paranormal stuff. I'll start off with a pretty creepy one. I've personally never encountered it. In fact, I've only known 3 people who claim that they have. But the whole of City 5 is scared of whatever is called the flatman. That's what we call it. It's said to appear in some of the most rural areas of the region. The best way I could describe it is to compare it to a living shadow. But it's more like a void in the shape of a human on the floor. Its shape cannot appear on trees or buildings, only on the ground. Apparently, the flatman has made entire tribes of people disappear. In 1989, a group of around 10 people went to hunt it. 2 months later, clothing started to wash up in the local river. It was their clothing. Apart from being wet, the clothing wasn't damaged at all. The next night, screaming could be heard outside the town. Another time, a guy was hunting a deer. He spotted it, but it seemed to have its leg stuck in something. When he got closer, he could see the flatman holding on to the deer's leg. Then it started making this kind of pulling motion. You know, like what happens when something is pulled through a tiny hole? That's basically what happened to the deer. Not a trace was left. The hunter instantly runs as far away as he can. Another story with the flatman is, I have this classmate, let's call him Igor. Igor's dad has encountered the flatman at one point. It was 1992, and he was working for a small woodcutting business. Patches of forest are very valuable in Yakutia, so if your boss tell you, you can't really object. So he's at the spot, and he comes across some uprooted trees in the shape of a spiral. He tries to leave, but he keeps coming back at the spiral. He notices that the other trees are still bending. He starts to feel this weird sensation. His body is swayed towards the spiral. The pull gets so strong that he has to push himself off of other trees just to move forward. Then suddenly, all the uprooted trees get sucked up into the ground. Then the force of the pull is so strong that it breaks one of his arms. He looks over and there is a massive hole where the spiral was. In the hole, he can see the flatman. He starts moving in a swimming motion. See, the flatman is called that instead of like Shadow Man because he doesn't move like one. When you turn your shadow, changes shape to reflect that, but the flatman can't do that. He can't move his arm through his chest, so he moves in this weird swimming motion. Igor's dad starts running and the flatman gives chase. The flatman can screw with shadows and stuff. Every time a shadow of a tree gets in his way, he kind of just swats it away and the entire tree breaks. He makes it to his car and manages to lose it. Me and a few friends actually managed to stumble onto the crater that was left, and sure enough, it was in the shape of a spiral, but it was all overgrown by this point. The entire time we were near, everything felt weird and floaty, and we couldn't feel or smell or taste anything. And the last guy that I know of that encountered the flatman died in 2006, but someone did tell me his story. Apparently he was a hermit and lived away from the town. One day he noticed that the land had risen slightly and messed with the foundation. It keeps rising, so he gets the guy to take a look at it. The dude sees it and tells him to leave immediately. The hermit is stuck up, so he stays there. He awakes up to half his house missing and a giant pillar in the sky. Some locals say they saw the pillar. A few of the braver ones go to check it out. They find the guy. He's out cold, and his legs are missing. They said that it was such a clean cut that they weren't even bleeding. They get the guy and drive away. A few minutes later, the pillar goes back down, and the hermit wakes up. He says the flatman grabbed the shadow of his legs and just took them off before he passed out. I actually never went to the location to check it out because he genuinely lived in a pretty scary place that was full of bears and wolves. The flatman is one of the creepiest things here by far. Some of the nomads cover their ears if you bring him up, or will straight up start a fight with you. Some of the more integrated ones would tell tales of how ancient tribes tried their hardest to eradicate it, and the whole tribe would go missing. People really don't like talking about it. So I want to explain some more about the nomads. The nomads are basically tribes of nomadic horsemen that split off from the Yakut societies. Their language is very hard to understand, but some nomads have actually integrated into Russian society, and they translate for us. They believe some sort of pagan religion from what I've been told, and believe in 5 gods. The gods are named after the cardinal directions. North, or Kaed, god of wind and everything to do with the cold. There's South, or Amnid, god of fertility and nature. East is Zehun, god of the hunt and is also a trickster. The West is Varun, the god of guns and the god of death. Tengri is taken from Tengrism and is basically the Allfather type figure of the religion. There's also the kazaar, which is what I'll be telling a story about. Sometime around 2012, my dad goes out for a drink and doesn't come back, and people get worried and start to look for him. This isn't the first time this has happened, so I just kinda chilled. 2 weeks went by, and a few locals eventually found my dad's body. They requested I do a proper burial, and at this point I couldn't be bothered, so I just tell them to put him 6 feet under. The next day I'm out gathering firewood, and between the trees I see a pair of eyes staring at me. I try to get closer, but when I blink it disappears. Then when I'm walking back home I see it again on a rock. I can make out its shape. It's got these long, skinny legs, a small body, and big, shiny eyes. As soon as I saw it I knew it was the kazaar. In legend it's basically supposed to be an omen from the gods. If you somehow offend one of the gods, the kazaar starts appearing to you. I understood that I offended one of the gods by not burying my father. I've lived here long enough to know not to screw around with the paranormal, so the next day I gave my father a proper burial, and I stopped seeing the kazaar after that. The kazaar appears to a lot of hunters. Most hunters heed the warning and either avoid the area or bring what they killed back to the area they took it from. There were a few stuck-ups though. One guy didn't heed the warning and had a bear break into his home and maul him to death, and he got killed. Then someone was found impaled on a deer's horn. Another was found frozen in a lake. A hunter's gun was exploded when he shot, and it mutilated him. And a few people were crushed by their own roof caving in on them from snow buildup. All these people had said something about being visited by the kazaar. The guy who got killed by a bear had told close friends that the kazaar's eyes became brighter over time. For him, the eyes were bright enough to illuminate his whole house. I had a friend who got quite unlucky with the kazaar. Let's call him Vlad. Vlad loved to seclude himself in the wilderness, and when he had free time, he would always go up north to camp. One day, Vlad goes camping. Nothing goes wrong. But when he's coming back to City 5, he starts seeing the kazaar. My friend didn't kill any animal, nor did anything that would piss off the gods, so he assumed that the area he was in was off limits. But the kazaar didn't go away. In fact, he started seeing wolves stalking him in the brush. One day while Vlad is going to work, the pack of wolves attack him. One of them latches onto his arm and starts tearing into it. He manages to hurt the wolf and gives him enough time to escape to safety. After that, the wolves leave him alone. For months, he ponders what he could have done, but he just can't quite figure it out. He can't put his finger on it. Then one of the locals said he found Vlad's campsite, and sitting there was a single beer can. So one summer in particular, I didn't have much money, and a lot of stuff breaks down before the winter. And if you know anything about Eastern Russia at all, you'll know that the winters are absolute hell, so I need money quick. There's a meat vendor that'll pay good for bison. The vendor gets a party together, and we go hunting. The party consists of me, Igor, Vlad, Andrew, Mikhail, and 5 other people, but they're irrelevant since we split into 2 groups. Our group goes to a place that's around 50 kilometers from Chokurda. We're deep in a forest tracking some bison prints, and suddenly we hear a low groan. As soon as it stops, the wind picks up and it starts snowing. Snow in September isn't the weirdest thing out here, but it's not really common. As time goes on, the wind and snowfall become stronger. The vision is so obscure that you can only see around 50 meters in front of you. And it's also starting to get late, so we're trying to find some place to go for camp. We come up to this slope which has a great view of the area. Igor and Andrew stay behind to set up camp while the rest of us go gather wood. 5 minutes in, we hear Igor shout something which basically means holy shit. Everyone comes back and Igor is pointing at the horizon. I don't know if Igor had eagle vision or something, but we couldn't make anything out. So we tell Igor there's nothing out there, and we continue our day and go to sleep. But at 6 a.m., Mikhail wakes me up, and he's kind of freaking out. He says, "Dude, wake the F up." So I get out of my tent, and there's this giant in the horizon. It looked almost humanoid, but it was crooked and skinny as hell. The arms didn't quite match. It had trees and stuff growing on it, or something that looked like it, but 2 of them grew into the shape of horns. I couldn't make out its features due to fog, and it made 0 noise. The only reason Mikhail woke up was because hundreds of birds were perched up and flying around it. All of us leave the area immediately and never come back. We got chewed out by our employer and had to do stupid janitor jobs, but we don't really care though, because I'm not screwing with whatever the hell that was. Okay, so in between Salik and Belaja Gora, there's a community of 5 houses. In one of these homes lives this guy that we call Khan. He has hundreds of stories. A lot of them are so out there that even I couldn't believe them. He's very awkward to be around because all he talks about is nomad culture, hunting and sheep herding. So here's a story that involved him. In 2014, Andrew and Vlad had jobs with the local police. They get an assignment to check up on a patch of land that someone wants to cultivate. It sounds like a boring job, so they invite me and Andrew to camp with them. On the way there, we see a lot of nomad tribes moving around. When we stop by the community, we ask about the tribes. They tell us that they're moving for some sort of summer solstice celebration. Before we leave, they insist that we take Khan with us. It was plain obvious that they just wanted to get rid of him for a few days, so we begrudgingly took him with us. The whole car ride was very awkward and boring. We finally got to our spot, which was around 10 kilometers from Kuberganya. We set up, start grilling shashlik. It's a pretty fun evening, to be honest, and even Khan got a bit relaxed. Everyone goes to sleep at around 12 a.m. I wake up at 2 a.m. to Khan throat singing at the top of his lungs. We were pretty drunk and ticked off, so we started telling Khan to STFU. While we're arguing, Mikhail snaps and starts screaming at Khan. The argument goes on for 2 hours. After everything calms down a bit, we decide to pack up and just leave there. The problem is, we're nowhere near our camp. It's like we got moved to some random location. There's a thick fog that obscures everything 5 meters each way. Khan tells us that we royally screwed up. He tells us that we need fire right now. Everyone scrambles for their lighters. Khan tells everyone to follow him. We think about it for a second, but realize it's probably better to follow the 2-meter tall nomad than stay out here in the fog. So Khan starts leading us. While we're walking, Khan is singing some nomad song, and we hear a bell ring. As soon as we hear it, we're all lying face down on the ground. Then we hear a chirp, and we all start throwing up water. Khan says, "It started. Listen to everything I've got to say. Make sure you check your back if you hear weird noises." As soon as he finishes his sentence, there's a child's giggle, and all of our clothes are now tied together. We hear a loud pop and our fire sources become 10 times brighter. Khan tells us to carry on. In the fog, there are silhouettes of 4 figures watching us. One is just some big dude with a crown. The second one is also huge. His knees are bent backwards and he has like deer horns. The third has a woman's proportions but has goat horns. The fourth looks like a normal dude with a gun. We can hear a chorus of laughter and cheering coming from all around us. Khan asks Vlad if he's checked his back. We all turn around, and there's this dried-up tall person basically looking like a skeleton behind Vlad. He gets scared away by the fire and retreats back into the fog. There's multiple of them and they keep trying to jump at us. Khan calls them failures. We come across a rabbit. Khan instantly grabs it and kills it. He raises the rabbit high into the air and says something in his language. We can hear a bit of booing and groaning coming from around us. Then a deer silhouette comes next to the other silhouettes. The one with deer horns grabs it by the head and snaps its neck. It throws the deer to Khan's legs. Khan tells us to bow down and repeat after him. We do it. The silhouettes disappear and the fog starts to clear up. We find our campsite was just a few 100 meters away. Khan takes the deer and rabbit with him. We come back to the station. Andrew and Vlad are discussing what to say to in their report. Khan tells them to write the report as if everything was normal, but to recommend to hire him for the field. So that's what they do, and Khan works and lives over there from now on. Now I also want to tell a few cool stories from the fishermen of Yakutia. Now there are 4 islands off the coast where these legends happened. The first one is the Strider. The Strider is a creature with 2 legs, completely white, and it strides on ice. Go figure. Many fishermen have seen it from a distance, but that's about it. One guy, though, let's call him Peter, he claims to have seen the Strider up close and personal. So in 2001, he's fishing off the coast of Kotelny Island. The boat he's on has some sort of malfunction, so they let it drift for a while they fix it. They drift near some ice, and because this is Siberia, they anchor down and decide to walk on it. So Peter's just walking around, and from a slight crack in the ice, 2 sharp appendages come out. They hook onto the ice and the rest of its body rises up from the water. From up close, he described the Strider to be kind of crustacean-like. He estimated that it's about 3 meters high. It of course had 2 legs that also had those weird lobster fins behind them, and finally had a very long proboscis. It walked right past them. It then used its proboscis to catch a bird right out of the air. It keeps walking until it's out of sight. I ask why it doesn't just catch fish. Another fisherman tells me it's afraid of the orcas. It tells me that he's seen orcas play with something really similar to the Strider's legs. When the orcas come out, it's like it goes onto the ice to avoid them. He also tells me how the proboscis thing explains why many fishermen keep finding seals and fish and birds that have all been completely hollowed out. So the second story is from the Bermuda Square, which is a funny nickname for an area between New Siberia, DeLong Island, Zakov Island, and Vilvitsky Island. In this area, at random points, there's a weird sound very familiar to a whale song that can be heard. If you are hearing this sound, you must not touch the ice with bare skin. If you do, you die. A local described it like this. There was one guy that had a knack for breaking icicles. So when they're out on the water and they heard the sound, everyone stops what they're doing. This guy gets nervous, and the first icicle he found, he tried to break it. As soon as he touched it, the guy turned blue and collapsed. Then the song stopped. He also talked about another boat that was fishing while it was lightly snowing. As soon as the song started, half the ship's crew died. And nomads don't know anything really about this. It's quite a recent thing, with the earliest sighting I know of happening in 1979. And the third is the imposters. Sometimes, fishermen who weren't there will show up on the boat for a bit and just disappear, and they'll act like everything is completely normal. There might have been hundreds of ships with an imposter on them and people just wouldn't notice. and no one knows who or what these things are. This one is a bit cheaty because it didn't happen in Yakutia, but who cares? It was 2012, and Levik, as I'll call him, works for this Russian oil corporation. And if I'm not mistaken, I think it might have been Lukoil. Levik is stationed on a tanker, led by an icebreaker. They're in the middle of the ocean, maybe 300 kilometers away from Eveliv Island. Their radar picks up something huge near the ship. An object approximately 200 meters in length. It just swims past them. Levik swears he saw a huge bump in the surface in the icebreaker's trail. After that, the journey carries on as normal, but the radar keeps picking something up at random intervals. It really gets on the captain's nerves, so one of the crew members suggests letting a camera down to see what's there. They see a long, serpentine organism is latched onto the ship. It has giant eyes, like a squid, but the fins and body of a shark. The guys from the icebreaker suggest using electricity, and manages to get the weird creature off, and the journey continues without any further issues. And this one is the last one in the post. All folks have a popular legend. It's about a Soviet black site. It was built during the 90s, but the dissolution of the Union stopped its construction. But some people say that the black site was actually finished. They say they've seen American, Chinese, Turkish, Kazakh vehicles all visit it. People disagree where exactly it is, but most say it's somewhere in the Ust-Nera mountains. There are stories of lights in the sky, unknown crafts and vehicles, monsters, and even nuclear accidents. My favorite one is about a man who showed up at Arctic, and this guy could punch through walls and run as fast as a car. The dude rampaged the town until the government put him down. Speaking of the government, in 2015 something piqued their interest. The army and other government forces started showing up all over the place. The government's presence here interfered with our local economy. I never realized just how bad money could get until the ruble was standardized here. Most people say they came here for gas. Well, that's most likely true. They keep messing with the paranormal stuff out here. At one point, I saw them throwing stuff into the spiral hole. I don't really like that. There's a bunch of thugs here now. All these things were getting on my nerves, and that thing pushed me over was this. It's 5 a.m. and everyone wakes up to a siren blaring and a guy with a megaphone telling us, "Stay inside until otherwise directed. If you leave your home, you will receive a fine of 24,000 rubles." That's when I decided to immigrate. 3 years later, I received a call from Igor. He updates me on the town. He says that since the government came in, everything's gone to hell. Vlad, Igor, and Mikhail all left for big cities. But before they left, a bunch of weird things happened. First, everyone in Naishalak disappeared for about a week and then reappeared. Second, the government kept ordering people to stay inside more frequently. Third, every week on Friday at 6 a.m., a loud-ass horn would play. Fourth, the thugs that were there killed an innocent guy. And fifth, this one guy said he had spotted the flatman near the town. This sent the whole City 5 into an uproar. Both Igor's and Andrew's families left for Novosibirsk. Then Vlad got fired, so he left. Igor recently decided to check up on Mikhail, but couldn't find him. Nobody in town knew where he had gone. Igor said that every city he goes to is miserable to be in. Every town has got some loser thugs trying to tax people out of their homes. He also noted that something was wrong with the place. Felt like something bad was going to happen. Then one of the checkpoints he goes to is completely empty, and then another, and another, and another. 3 checkpoints in a row empty on a main road. I really want to go back and check on Mikhail after this whole quarantine is over, but I don't know, guys. I'm kind of scared of what Igor told me. In early 2019, he calls me up. He says that most of the roads are shut down and guarded. No one can leave or enter. If they're going so far to isolate the place, what's going on there? So I hope you enjoyed those stories. I enjoyed telling them. I had a lot of fun reading that, to be honest. But what do you think? Do you think it's true? Do you think it's just exaggerated? Or do you think it's all a hoax? And I'm fully aware that I butchered a lot of the pronunciations in this because I just cannot pronounce words that are in a language like Russian. I just can't do it. So anyways, I hope you get past that, and I hope you did enjoy the video. And if you did enjoy it, then maybe you'll like and subscribe. Maybe you'll leave a comment. Maybe you'll donate to the Patreon. Whatever you want to do. Anyways, I hope you all have a good night or day whenever you're watching this, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you for watching, and thank you for pulling up a stump with me.